Alright, this is Weapon X Reacts and we're back with another video, and this is going to be a review of Johnny 316, which is a film directed by Eric Effigan, and to me, this is honestly one of the most underrated films that I have ever seen in my life, as it was just so well acted and directed. And not just that, but this is a movie that I totally recommend that you should go check out once in your life, as it is going to be an experience that you will never forget. But I will warn you that it can get pretty weird at times. But still, this is a great film that deserves a lot more attention, especially nowadays. And I am just going to let you know that there will be a lot of spoilers in this review. I am going to break down the plot of this film. So, a preacher without resources spends his days reciting Bible verses on the street. One day he meets a young, jobless girl who wanders on Hollywood Boulevard. An impossible love story begins. If there was one thing that I really liked about this film, is the way and how it does such a great job at telling a story that is deeply compelling. And while it may look simple at times, this is a very well written and complex movie that will stay with you long after it's over. And to me, one of the most interesting things about this film is the fact that it is so much more than just an unconventional romantic drama, but a powerful study on spiritual isolation, human desire, and the flaws of our modern society as a whole. And not just that, but I thought some of the acting performances were really well done, especially from Vincent Gallo as Johnny. And to me, this is honestly one of his best performances, as he did such a great job at portraying his character as someone who was deeply flawed, but compelling all at the same time. And when we first see his character in the opening scene of the film, it immediately starts off with him gliding over the streets of Los Angeles. But as the film goes on, it quickly transitions into a shot of him trying to preach his message while handing out pamphlets to other people. And this is where you start to realize that this is a man who has a deep connection with his faith in religion and God. And to me, this was a perfect introduction into who he really is as a person. And not just that, but it perfectly sets up everything for the film that you are about to see. And I am not going to lie to you right now. Out of all of the films that I have seen in my life, this is definitely up there as being one of the weirdest movies in the history of cinema. But despite that, it does such a great job at exposing the dark truth about living in LA and Hollywood Boulevard. Especially when you realize that this is a society that is slowly destroying itself from the inside out. Especially when it comes to things like empty consumerism and sexual pleasures. I want to talk about his past for a bit, as it really adds a lot to his character in a way. So, the film implies that he was once a sinner before dedicating his whole life to God. And not just that, but you even see moments of where he is being tempted by his past. And to me, it really adds a lot to the main reason on why he rejects Sally's chances at having a relationship so much throughout the film. As it really goes to show you that this is a man who is desperate in wanting to start over and find meaning into his own life by becoming a street preacher. One of the most interesting things about him as a character is the way in how he tries to protect himself from the fact that he is a man who is deeply consumed by his own personal hell. And while he tries to do whatever it takes in order to cope with his situation, he knows that it won't bring any peace to his life. But despite that, you can really see his desperation in wanting to do whatever it takes in order to become a better person through his devotion to God. And to me, it really adds a lot to the fact that he is a physical manifestation of a ghost who is already out of time. And not just that, but the film implies him as being a modern day John the Baptist. And you can really see that in the scenes of where he is preaching on the street. Because while he tries to bring his message to the world, nobody gives a shit about him or his message. And not just that, but it's one of the main reasons on why he is honestly one of the most well-written and complex characters in the history of independent cinema. If there was one thing that I really liked about Vincent Gallo's performance, is the way in how he brought so much depth and humanity into his character. And to me, it's a perfect example of the fact that he is such a great actor, as he does an amazing job at playing characters who are deeply flawed but complex individuals. And you can really see that through his performance in this movie, Buffalo 66, and The Brown Bunny, for example. And overall, Johnny is a deeply complex character, and Vincent Gallo honestly makes this film better than it already is with his performance, as it felt so subtle but so powerful all at the same time. And if he wasn't in this film, this movie would have been a complete disaster, but still an artistic masterpiece. And I am actually going to be honest right now, Vincent Gallo deserves a lot more praise for his performance in this movie right here, as he was just so charismatic in the role. And not just that, but I even heard that the main reason on why he starred in this film in the first place was all because he needed the funds for his directorial debut, Buffalo 66, which is a great movie, by the way. And not only that, it's one of the greatest independent films in the history of cinema. I thought Nina Brosh did a pretty great job playing Sally, despite the fact that this was her first time starring in a feature film. And you can really see that from the fact that she used to be a model at one point in her life before she became an actress. And to me, one of the most interesting things about Sally as a character is the way in how she tries to do whatever it takes in order to find a sense of connection with another person, which she does through the character of Johnny. And not just that, but if there was one thing that I really liked about her performance, is the fact that she does such a great job at portraying her character as someone who is deeply compelling, but flawed at the same time. And not just that, but I thought the chemistry between her and Vincent Gallo's character was just so well done, as it fits perfectly with the idea between two lost souls who meet each other for the first time in their lives. And overall, this is honestly one of her best performances, as she brought so much depth and vulnerability into her character and performance. And not just that, but it really proved that she can be a pretty good actress. And it wasn't just her and Vincent Gallo that gave great performances, but I thought some of the supporting cast did a pretty great job playing their characters, especially from Seymour Castle as the storekeeper and the actor who played the pimp, even if they weren't in the film that much. And I am not going to lie to you right now, this is honestly some of the best acting that I have ever seen in an art house film. And despite the fact that this is a weird and fucked up film, it's pretty thought-provoking in a way. I thought Eric Fergen's direction of the film was just so well done, as he does such a great job at telling a story about the rejection of faith in modern society, but in a way that feels deeply compelling and artistic. And not just that, but it makes me realize that we need more films just like this, especially when we are living in an age of where every film that comes out nowadays is nothing more but soulless and generic slop that nobody asks for. And not just that, but you know one thing that Hollywood needs to stop doing? Stop hiring writers. They care more about pushing their woke dog shit instead of telling a good story. Because that's the main reason on why we go to movies in the first place, is to get a good story and be entertained. And if they're not going to do that, then guess what? That's fine. Because I am so fucking happy to see them fucking fall apart. Because guess what? They did this to themselves. And I actually will admit, Eric Fergen deserves a lot of praise for his direction of this film, as he made a provocative and thought-provoking masterpiece that will stay with you long after it's over. The cinematography is honestly one of the main reasons on why Johnny 3:16 is just an absolute masterpiece of independent cinema. And if there was one thing that I really liked about it, is the way in how it does such a great job in making every scene feel meditative but intimate and surrealistic all at the same time. And not just that, but it fits perfectly with the film's themes and its story, despite the fact that it is heavily stylized and unconventional. And this goes the same way, especially when you look at the religious imagery, for example. I thought the scene on where Johnny is tempted by his sins is honestly one of the most powerful scenes that I have ever seen in a film like this. So it starts off with him trying to clean himself in the bathroom, but when he is confronted by his own past sins, he tries to do everything that he can in order to block it out through prayer. And then after that, we see a shot of Johnny walking out of his apartment and into the elevator. And I just want to say that Vincent Gallo's acting in the scene was just so well done, as he does such a great job at showing the pain and guilt that his character feels throughout the film. And if there was one thing that I really liked about the scene, is the fact that this is a pretty realistic depiction of a man who is desperately trying to come to terms with himself and his own reality. And not just that, but I thought the scene on where Johnny is seduced by Sally was just so well shot and directed, as it fits perfectly with everything that this whole movie is about. And to me, one of the most interesting things about the scene is the fact that it foreshadows everything that will happen later on. I thought Louise Fletcher did a pretty great job playing Sally's mother, despite the fact that she was only in the film for a couple of minutes. And if there was one thing that I really liked about her performance, is the way in how she brought so much depth into the role, as it really makes her character more than just a generic side character. And overall, this is honestly one of her most underrated performances, as it proves that she can do such a great job, especially when it comes to playing characters who are deeply compelling. And I totally recommend that you should go check out some of her other roles, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, starring Jack Nicholson, as that is honestly one of the greatest performances in the history of cinema. And I may have reviewed that film at some point. One of the most interesting things about this film is the fact that it is a modern interpretation of John the Baptist and Oscar Wilde's Salome. And you can really see that from the characters, the religious symbolism, and the way in how the film tells its story, as it was just so well done. And if there is anything else that I want to say about this film, is don't expect it to be a traditional romantic drama. It's an art film, and that is exactly one of the main reasons on what makes this film so fucking good. And I actually will admit that when I first saw this film, I thought it was just fucking weird. But when I thought about this film for a bit, it actually stuck with me. And it made me realize that this is a deeply thought-provoking and well-written movie that we just don't get anymore, because nowadays cinema is just empty at this point. Nobody cares about new films anymore, because at the end of the day, they're just content. And you can really blame the wokeness from Hollywood and the contentification of cinema. If there was one thing that I really didn't like about this film, is the fact that some of the characters here are really boring and forgettable, and while the film may look slow and pretentious at times, it does such a great job at telling a story that is honestly one of the most compelling stories that you will ever see in a film like this, despite the fact that it never got a proper release when it first came out in 1998, and it was stuck between Vincent Gallo's Buffalo 66 and LA Without a Map. This is the rating that this film got on Rotten Tomatoes, so no score from the critics and no score from the audience. And I am going to read out the reviews right now. So for the first review, Eric Fergen's Johnny 316 takes Oscar Wilde's Salome and transfers it to Hollywood Boulevard. This Sally never dances, but she does meander the boulevard in a movie that simply wanders and never finds a groove, tone, or point of view. The rather inspired central idea of Vincent Gallo as a modern-day John the Baptist goes underdeveloped, with a ton of pretense in its wake. For the second one, as a work capturing the atmosphere of life on Hollywood Boulevard, Johnny 316 offers up a genuine time capsule of the streets' seedy late 90s condition before recent renovations. For the third review, this was just fantastic. The lady seemed to become delusional. There was an emphasis on those who want enlightenment and those still in so-called degeneracy. This was just amazing. For the fourth review, tragic commentary on lost people, especially those who thrive on stardom and fame. And not just that, but even a preacher can fade into oblivion on Hollywood Boulevard. The impaired man polishing the stars is just one element contributing to an extended metaphor. Vincent Gallo exposes our dark truths in film, a rarity, brilliant. And that is something I most definitely agree with, and as I read these reviews, it makes me realize that this film is just an absolute masterpiece, and while it's not a perfect movie, it's definitely a whole lot better than the woke dog shit that we get from modern Hollywood nowadays. And one negative thing that I actually heard from critics about this film is that it felt like an overlong music video. And to me, I just did not feel it. Because this is a very intelligent film that actually felt like it was written by someone who actually gave a shit about telling a story that is deeply thought-provoking and provocative and interesting. You're not gonna get that shit from modern Hollywood nowadays, because every single film that's made is just made for one thing: to appeal to modern audiences. Guess what? The modern audience does not fucking exist, bitch. It never fucking did. Stop trying to appeal to something that doesn't exist. I thought the soundtrack was just so well done, as it fits perfectly with the film's haunting tone and its story. And not just that, but the way in how this film uses documentary style interviews was just so well done, and it really shows just how good Eric Efagan really is as a director. I am going to explain the ending of this film. So, after being rejected by Johnny and realizing that she will never have a relationship with him, Sally is immediately confronted by the same man from the adult store while she was trying to take a walk along the street. And while he tries to seduce her into having sex, she tries to make a deal with him in order to kill Johnny. But as the film goes on, Johnny is quickly stabbed in the neck while he is trying to preach his message on the street. And the scene ends with Sally trying to touch him while he is bleeding out on the floor. And I just want to say that the acting from Nina Brosh in the scene was just so well done, as you could really feel that she has gone insane. And to me, this was a perfect but tragic ending to a film like this. And if there was one thing that I really liked about the scene, is the way in how it does such a great job at showing that this is a society of where sexual pleasure and soulless consumerism is the only fucking thing that matters to people. And to me, it fits perfectly with everything that this whole movie is about. The death of faith and morality in modern day society. And not just that, but if you really think about it for a bit, this film is more relevant than ever before. This film really grows on you when you first watch it, I'm not gonna lie. I am going to show you the trailers of this film, starting with the first one.
God's hope is everywhere. God's light is everywhere. Listen to his voice. Listen to his words.
Now for the second one. This is definitely one of Vincent Gallo's most underrated performances and films.
Rejoice not, people, for the seed of thy ignorance has set forth monsters.
Like, this is a quiet portrayal of a man who is married by God. And it's the only thing that he really cares about, and nothing else matters.
Clever scam. I'll give a man. He works it good.
Let me touch you.
To soar high in the sky in the name of the Lord shall show you the path. For love alone will let you love the Lord and hear the voice of He who loves you. Do love the Lord. Do hear His voice. For He is forgiving and He is full of forgiveness. And He loves you and I love you. God does.
In conclusion, this was an amazing film, as it does such a great job at showing the dark side of Los Angeles and how faith can be rejected in modern society. And it really goes to show you that we just don't get movies like this anymore, because nowadays every film is either a sequel, prequel, or remake or spin-off of something that already came before. So it's really nice seeing a film that is actually original and deeply complex. And if there is anything else that I want to say is, go watch this film, as it's just an absolute masterpiece when it comes to the acting, directing, cinematography, and themes. And not just that, but you could really tell that this was made by a filmmaker who actually gave a shit about the film that he wanted to make. And he did it perfectly. And I am not going to lie to you right now, this film reminded me a lot of David Lynch and Lars von Trier in a way. And I just want to let you know that the next films that I'm going to be reviewing is Raging Bull by Martin Scorsese, Ford vs. Ferrari, Project Hail Mary, and Whiplash. So go get ready for those. Also, anyway, that's all I got for today. Go away now, and always remember, strike back like a weapon against wokeness. And keep supporting independent films just like this, because we need them more than ever before. So yeah, there you go. See you in the next one.